think we're back up and running now. Sorry about that. The sub camera. I still haven't quite figured out OBS yet, which is the program that I'm using. For some reason, if the little webcam goes down, the whole thing stops, and there's no way of just refreshing the camera by itself. You have to turn the whole thing off and start again, which, you know, when you're broadcasting isn't the best thing in the world. So I shall have to have a look up on their website or some sort of forum to see if there's a fix or a workaround. So, you know, as a professional picture framer, I'm not really somebody that's into their streaming technology, but I do like to learn. I do like to have, you know, new projects and new little things and ways and experiments and, you know, different ways of doing things. So, you know, all of this streaming is a little bit of an experiment for us, but it's allows me to have a play. It keeps everything interesting. Means I get to have a chat to, you know, my customers and things like that, and they can see me doing the work as well if they want to. Also, if you want to learn something, you're more than welcome to ask any other questions and play about with it. You know, ask why I use these particular colours. You know, what are the questions I ask customers? How do I deal with customers? You know, what's been your favourite projects? That sort of stuff. If you wanted to get hold of us. There's a mid-size frame, so I'm just going to use a mid-size D-ring and obviously a screw which is deep enough to take it all. Fairly chunky screw on this, quite a deep rebate. So it's one of those lovely sort of slope away frames which sort of really do add depth and draw in the eye. So I'll finish this one up and then we'll start having a look at those textiles I promised you. So textiles can be a little bit fiddly. I think what I'll do is when we get onto the textiles, I'll get the lights in a little bit closer and flick just to the webcam, which is the reason why it was so important earlier to make sure it was up and running. Well, we've got a couple of cross stitches to have a look at. I've probably got another couple that I need to do for Christmas, but someone's brought in a lovely triptych, so I think doing the same thing 3 times is probably enough before showing you a different technique. And obviously we'll come back and have a look at another cross stitch another day. Cross stitches are fantastic because they are great bits of artwork that, well, they're interactive artwork essentially. So someone's gone to all the effort of creating an illustration and then someone's gone through and created art within art. So it's one of the beautiful things about cross stitches really is lots of people have dedicated hours and hours and hours and time to creating some, you know, beautiful piece of textile which is on top of somebody else's bit of art. So it's interactive. We do get our annual pilgrimages and things like that. Anyway, there's Shaggy Dog all ready to go. So we printed that one off earlier as well. So let's try and show you without getting the light on it. I'll move it about a little bit so you can see. So yeah. It's a lovely little image of some of these puppies. That one's all wrapped up, nicely ready to go. So, as I said, I'm going to pull in the camera, pull in the lights, get a little bit closer. You'll find out in a bit why that's fairly important, because it's going to be fairly. It's not going to work. We don't exist anymore. We do exist. Yeah. So, let's get rid of that. We've fiddled about all our settings over the past couple of days. Right up there. Let's play about with this, make sure it's all nice and pretty, because it's all being recorded for YouTube and things like that. That gives me plenty of play with. Right, let's put some lights in. Right, how's that look? That looks pretty good. Right, so give the table a good old scrub. Put some of those bits and bobs and put that on there. Let's get this carpet changed again soon. Carpet itself is perfectly good. It's just little things like silicone seal and stuff accumulating over time. Right. So, some tape as well while looking at it. Right, so some lovely little cross stitches. Got a bit of a crease running down there. I'm going to stretch them first and see whether they will need an iron. Hopefully they won't. We obviously don't like to put any form of iron or anything like that on any person's textiles, just in case of any bits, etc. But yeah. So she's come in and so they've come in and they've asked for a lovely triptych. So we're going to put all these things to the same frame. So obviously we're going to stretch it. So I've made a bit of conservation grade sticky board. Made it slightly bigger than this, so obviously we can stretch it into the piece. I'm going to finish it off again with a bit of tape in behind, so it's all nice and ready to go. Don't forget we're going to use the sealer behind. The first thing to do is to have a look at with any form of cross stitch is the actual back itself. Now these ones are fairly simple in that they're a solid stitch. And what I mean by that is you can't really see my fingers on the other side of this piece here. And some of them you can do obviously on this translucent cloth. And that's particularly important with things like these black tails. This one is, someone's put a lot of time and effort into the back of this one, which is fantastic. It means we're not going to have any the threading shining through. It also means that we don't have a risk cutting one of these cross link stitches here, which is where they obviously move from one area to another without tying it off. We don't want to cut any of those. So we just concentrate on the tail. So for example, on the edge here where she's say she, could be anybody, couldn't it? They've left just a couple of loops in here, so we would normally take those off. Because all this material is going to be hidden behind, it doesn't actually matter that much. So with these, very easily, we just crack on. So just check this board is square. Just use my mat board cutter for that. So I found the square edge. Finding the square edge just allows me to use the side of it. So we're going fairly tight on this because it is a triptych. Now the reason why that's an issue is because obviously I'm going to get two boards and an aperture in between here. Sorry, the two apertures, the border in between two apertures. But yeah, fun. So, first things first, go back to the board. As I said, this is a conservation grade board, so make sure that you obviously, it's a good, high quality board. Obviously, you don't want the customer's prints or anything like that to deteriorate over time. So, yes, we're using a sticky board commercially, but it's a good grade board. So we'll just start off with a cross in the middle, and then tweak it out a little bit. So I know that this side here is square, so I'm going to concentrate on this side, and I'm going to work it around in a minute. So as you can see, the majority of that creasing from where it's been folded is coming out straight away. We may have to give it a bit of steam later, but obviously we don't want to do that. We've stuck it onto a board, potentially can come off. Obviously when you're working with any form of textiles, make sure that your hands are clean before you do anything, because you're going to be touching the surface of them. So this one is getting trickier by the second actually. There's some link stitches across the top here which are a little bit mobile. But anyway, it should be absolutely fine. So I'm working on this side here being square, the side of the board. So let's turn it facing you. So I'm working on this side here being square, so I'm actually going to concentrate on this bottom line here, so that I can do this. Okay? And then basically I'm going to work it back. So I'm going to do it on the sideways. I obviously normally do it facing me, but otherwise you won't be able to see it. So I know that this side in here is square, so just going to pull this down so it's about 2 stitches shy of this here. I'm just going to work my way down slowly and then work it again until we get it nice and square. Obviously things move, so you need to triple check every time. So with one hand I'm pulling, with the other on. I'm essentially laying down the stickiness again. Obviously, if you can't get hold of these high grade boards and things like that, then you can do the traditional lacing effect, which I shall attempt to show you a little bit later with the dragons. I'm just going to get these two nice beach huts done first of all. So the only complaint we've ever had from our cross stitching before is that a lady lost the competition because one of our stitches was half a millimetre out. Which to be honest, I was quite impressed by it being half a millimetre out. But obviously, you know, as a commercial picture framer, we're professional picture framer, we're not going to adhere to competition standards. We're going to do our very, very best. But all textiles will move. They will simply picking up a frame and moving it from one side to another can mean that a stitch might loosen by a millimetre or two. And as you can clearly see, putting tension on everything, it doesn't want to do what you want it to do. So we will always do our level best to get everything laser square, but sometimes that's just impossible. Even if you were to do lacing at home, sort of micro lacing, so having a lace every couple of millimetres, which obviously detriment the material, it's still not going to get anything completely square. Your best bet is to get it as square as physically possible. Most people are happy with the end result because the majority of people don't look at things under a magnifying glass in the competition. And this is one of the major expenses in framing and cross stitches is the stretching. So if you can afford or have the ability to do lacing at home, it's going to save yourself a lot of money. Because essentially you're not paying somebody like me to do this. So it's going to take me a good little chunk of time to do. And we'll probably go back in and sort it out later as well. We'll go back in again. Just the nature of a textile. So I'm basically happy with the bottom there. I'm not going to get overly precious with it. The primary reason for that is as soon as I stretch the other three sides, they're going to move again. So I'm going to have to go back in and mess about with them. I'm just going to tape up the back here. Obviously, we'll have to go back in and play with this again later. Anyway. So now that we know this edge is square and this edge is square, I can then use this as the square to the next edge. The only minor issue with that is there's a bit of a bulge here, so I have to just lift it up a little bit. So I'm just lifting up a little bit, being very, very careful along the bottom, because obviously you've got that square already. There we go. So got that one there fairly square. So this one isn't too far out. We'll manoeuvre it. Obviously, part of the primary reason for stretching the material is to get some tension on it as well. Which obviously gets a little bit flatter. Stops it from manoeuvring over time. I suppose meandering over time would be a better word for it. So just triple checking that lining down the bottom. Again, with all of these things, we're under light time, so we'll have to check these again tomorrow morning. But even after they are stretched, we can tweak them a little bit with the needle here and there. The other interesting little thing with some of these crosses and some of these, you know, seams, they can throw your eye out a little bit. The actual stitches themselves, the artwork. Right? So we've got the lovely lines of the fishing village down the side here, which, you know, it doesn't make it square. It isn't quite square anyway. The eye is very susceptible to different lines and different shapes. As I said, I'm going to go round and round again anyway. Just getting my nail in here just to make sure that all the tape's down nicely. We'll get all the fabric in as well. Just get some nice bond on it. We're getting to the side now, which is a little bit easier to get tension on. And they're actually often a little bit easier to get square because you're fighting against something on the other end, which is quite useful. So I'm just following a stitching line all the way down. So you can clearly see with it maneuvering behind. It's not wanting to stay completely square. We'll get it square as we go around and round. Just little finesses. Thank you, Mr. Motorcyclist. Nice and loud. Just over here behind you, we've got a lovely junction in the middle of the bath. So always get someone coming around. Someone who likes to be noisy. Yeah, sorry if there is a lot of echo in my audio. It's a fairly new thing for us, this streaming, and obviously being in a big old shop. I haven't quite got the sound equipment yet, but it's on my Christmas list. We'll try and update the audio for the new year, so please do bear with us. Got a lot of things in the background to cut out noise from outside. Being right in the middle of the city of Bath, there's an awful lot of students and dogs and cars and things like that, so it's difficult to do it. I'll tell you what, I'm going to get the soundproof, maybe that'll help. So I've just put a good couple of big foam boards in behind the microphone, so hopefully that'll dampen down some of the sound for you. I'm not sure it'll do a tremendous amount. We've got a lovely old Victorian railway station here, which has got massive high ceilings there. Right, excuse me, we're just going to have to clicky fingers and stuff like that. Yeah, not too much. That'll be up. Nice. Tell me if that's a bit better for you. We had a few minor issues at the start of the stream in that the small webcam wasn't working, so we had to restart OBS, which I think clicked onto an old audio thing. Fantastic. So I'll do my best to sort of look at the chat for you, but it is at the other end of the room and it's quite small, so you have to bear with me when I'm concentrating on these little cross stitches. Running out of water. So again, we know that this side here is square, so we'll just try and even everything up for us a little bit, and then we'll use this edge here to make sure that that's square. A little bit later, I'm going to go on to a lacing technique. It's a technique that I'm not as used to as this, but it's one that's quite useful on very delicate items. I think this is a silk embroidery. It's on a textile, but the embroidery itself is silk. I'm just using this back edge here as square, and then we'll work it around this way. Again, this is as square as possible. We're going to tweak it when we get the mounts made a little bit later. It won't be today; it'll be another day. But essentially, with a needle, we'll have the nice straight edge of the mount, so we can get it nice and square. Nature of any form of textiles, it's always a bit fiddly. It's always got that natural spring to it as well, so it likes to jump back even though you're getting a fair bit of pressure on it. But obviously you need that nice bit of tension on it to keep it nice and flat for many years to come. So we're using a conservation grade board here with a really nice permanent stick to it. So it's going to grab hold nicely of all the surface area and behind. So it's quite good for commercial reasons. It allows us to do it a little bit quicker than a lacing technique. So lacing can take a fair chunk of time to do. So I've only done two sides at the moment. Well, I've only done one side. I'm doing the second side at the moment, so it's fine to start again if you like. You can always get the tension on the other end. So with these we may have to go in and out a few times to make sure they're nice and square. There's no real bother. Once the initial square is is made, it's not really that much of an issue to go back in and redo it all. I'm just following that one line of stitching all the way around, all the way down. I'll finish this next line and then I'll have a quick sip of water and check and see if there's any chat. If you want to ask me any questions, you're more than welcome to. I'm going to check in a few seconds if you're asking anything for me. So this is a lovely triptych cross stitch. So we're keeping it very tight on the sides. Normally we'd have a fair chunk more of space outside this board, but I've got to butt a couple of boards up and then have a thin mount aperture in between. So I've given myself a bit of a task tonight in order to show cross stitch stretching. You can only do sort of three of them at a time because they do take an awful lot out on your fingers. Okay. Cross stitches are very akin to rock climbers. You could probably dangle off a rock face with their fingers. So there might be little images anyway. They're a nice little triptych of a beach side somewhere. So I'll have to play about with them later and just square them up a little bit down the bottom. Did I make the cross stitch? No. It's a customer did it. We're a professional picture framers, so we spend an awful lot of time doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. But no, we haven't got the time and effort and the sheer patience it is to make these fantastic cross stitches. I do like cross stitches. They're one of my favourite media actually, because obviously someone's either found a lovely pattern somewhere or made it from scratch. But they're a nice interactive bit of art essentially, because if you do buy a kit, someone's obviously spent time making a lovely artwork, and then someone else has spent an awfully awfully long time and pain and dedication in getting these very nice, neat stitches and basically copying out the artwork. So they are particularly nice, and obviously they've got a nice 3D tactile nature to them as well, even when they're framed. But no, we're primarily picture frames. So my own personal medium is it's a bit of photography, but it's fallen behind a little bit in terms of the pecking order, with obviously having this business and 2 small children and a wife that likes not having to stand around while I take 50,000 photographs of the same thing. We generally tend to put these behind glass, so what we'll do is we'll put a double mount on. We always like to use double mounts with any form of textile, because it's obviously the main objective of the mount is to lift the glass as far away from the image as possible to stop it from interacting. But by using a double mount, it stops any threads from being pulled up electrostatically. That's fairly important with this because there's some cross-linking. So this bunting here is actually a loose thread over the top, and that can get sucked up if you get the glass too close to it. And obviously we're doing it as a triptych, so we'll make 3 separate holes from the mount and button them up. So that's the reason why this board is fairly small, to get them quite tight in. The cross stitches themselves we'll need to tweak out. So when we essentially make the mounts and things like that, it's fairly easy just to, because this isn't going to be visible, just to hook that down and get the stitching in line with our nice square mount. So I'm not amazingly fussed if it's a millimetre or 2, not square, because we'll essentially with the mounts just tweak them down like that later on and get them looking lovely and pristine and square. So are you into your cross stitches then? Are you a big fan of cross stitch? Oh yeah, what is you working on? So we've had a few different bits and bobs in for Christmas. So we've got a dragon which I've got to lace up in a minute. We've got a lovely picture of some, well, I say a lovely picture, a lovely cross stitch of savannah with elephants and giraffes to do. We've just done a fantastic Jacobean print as well. Well, not print, but you know what I mean. The embroidery. It always amazes me when the guys come in with their American kits. There's quite a lot of American kits with how detailed some of those are. Not such a big fan of the framing suggestions on them, but you know, there are some epic kits. You see some long old hours in the Midwest or something. Christmas moose, how lovely. I've got a little 2-year-old daughter who's just figuring out what Father Christmas is and Santa. And obviously, when I take her home from nursery, she's pointing out all the lovely Christmas lights and things like that. And getting these delightful little oohs and ahs from the car seat next to me. It's very cute indeed. My 5-year-old boy is dead excited for Christmas too. I'm not sure he actually wants anything in particular. He just wants Christmas to happen, I think. So if it's a Christmas moose, does that mean you're putting a Rudolph nose on him as well, even though he's a moose? Lights in his antlers, lovely. That's the thing that I do miss with Christmas these days is just the nice static, simple, colourful lights. These days everything is LED and flashy and bright. I think I prefer the old-fashioned style lights of the ones that used to blow down the house if one of the bulbs went. It won't flash as much. Obviously, being based here in England, we don't have as much of the dressing of houses as they do in the States and in North America. But a lot of it's coming in. I see a lot of people go all out. There seems to be new housing estates where they seem to have nice little competitions as to who can dress up their house the most. I don't know, it's one of those traditions like Halloween and things like that, which is sweeping in. Yeah, ultra white, not brilliant. Don't talk to picture framers about ultra white. It's not just lights which we have problems with very white as well. We having a lot of problems with modern prints being printed on ultra white paper, which makes traditional whites look cream next to them. So we're having to get in Hollywood smile type mounts in. They're shockingly white, some of them. But yes, I'm not a big fan of shiny LEDs that are too white either. You got all your holiday plans sorted? Are you staying at home? Are you going off visiting relatives, or too busy doing your cross stitches to worry about that? There we go. So what order are they going to be in? So they're going to be in a triptych. So they're going to have the red boat, the lighthouse, and then the church. So we're actually going to be using a white with a black core on them as well, which is going to be quite nice. Yeah, so this one, we're going to do a double of this in between. So as you can see, the black line there on the actual core of the mount picks up really quite nicely on the stitch. Yeah, that's a square. So yeah, it's going to have a similar sort of effect to this. It's a nice sort of double mount with a thin bit in between. Just going to cut 3 apertures out of the 2 boards. So you're originally from the Netherlands, are you? I went to uni with a good friend of mine from the Netherlands, who we still meet up with. So, hold her head, as they say. So this is that dragon I was talking about a minute ago, the one that we're going to try and lace. I don't know why it's come into us in this condition, but it's got a bit missing to it. So we'll do our best to try and save this inner area here, and I'll stretch it square, and I'll probably make an oval aperture out of it. It's not helped by having a join in behind, so we're going to have to do that lacing technique because it's almost a bit like a pillowcase. So again, we're just using a high grade mount board underneath. I'm going to use a black thread. I don't know whether it's going to be visible or for you guys or not. Just tell me if it, well, not a lot I can do if it's not. So I don't know if you're very familiar with the lacing technique. So it's a fairly simple technique. It's sort of, it's a shoelace technique or a corset technique. You just you put it through. You don't put any tension on until right at the end, and you just crisscross a lot until you get through. It's quite a thin material, so I might need to put a bit of tape down the side of it. So it'll be very nice to go home and see the new nephew anyway. So always good to get an excuse to go home and see the family. I'm gonna have to do a bit of travelling myself soon. The wife's originally from Brazil, so we're gonna have to go down and see our folks down south as well. So we're well used to the long old flight ourselves. Trouble with long haul flights is I never sleep on planes. So I end up watching about 5-6 movies and then get to the other end and thrown some car keys and told to drive, which is probably not the best idea in the world. Especially on Brazilian roads anyway. Yeah, we only ever get down to Brazil every couple of years as well. The sheer distance, you do have to make it worth your while, don't you? Try and see everybody at the same time, which is just as tiring as staying at, as the flight itself. So I think I've been down to Brazil nearly 6 or 7 times, and I think I've only ever been out of Rio State to go and see anywhere else in Brazil twice. Just because obviously we've got grandmas and aunts and uncles and things like that to go and see. So in terms of the lacing, I'm actually doing the easiest side first. And then the tough bit will be this bit here, which there's not a lot of give to. And the issue is always with these is not putting too much tension so the board itself starts to ruckle, but enough tension that you can get a good bit of give on the other side, so it almost irons itself flat. So you can already see as we get closer and closer towards the end why picture framers much prefer to use that technique there. My lights are starting to go. Just turn the overhead lights, that might change the light a little bit. The lacing technique can get a bit fiddly. Not a lot of commercial picture framers have got a patience for it. A lot of untangling, a lot of playing about. It does get a nice even spread, especially on fragile fabrics or very thin fabrics. It's the one to use. And even if you do get tangles and bits and bobs that get in the way, because you're still getting tension across it, doesn't really matter if it does get too tangled up. Essentially, if I get to a state of frustration with this, I can just simply cut it and tie it off. Does occasionally turn to a bit of a cat's cradle. Don't know if you've ever played that game, Cat's Cradle. If you're still there, thanks very much for watching, and hopefully we'll see you soon. That's one to give up on. So now I've got to tie those two off there nicely. So now that I've done this, I can almost guarantee that that knot will come undone, because I've basically given up on it. Do a reef knot rather than a granny knot. Good with reef knots. Do those all the time. Other light going. I was on charge. The wife was taking photographs of all of her lovely balloons that she does, and her different bouquets. So there goes my light. I've got a nice bit of string here, so I'll just finish off a couple of loops and I'll start another track. Might even get lucky and see if those go through a hole actually. I'm pushing it a little bit, but never know. Bit of a long technique this, as I said, can be worth it if it doesn't fuzz up like that. Can be worth it for very fragile pieces, or pieces which have issues within them. First knot went through quite nicely. No. Really gummed up my needles. I've just got another needle just so I can thread that through and tie it off. So I've decided to use it. What looks like epoxy resin, which is genius. Thank you for that. So the reef knot seemed to work on the other one, so I'll do that again. Over and under one way, back over the other way in a figure of 8. Locks it out nicely. It's what we use on the framing. The strings to make it hang up on the wall for forever and a day. A little bit easier with thicker string though. There we go, that should do the trick. Nice. It's good, it means I can carry on the one line. So the joy of recording this for YouTube is that when I eventually come and edit this into one of our lovely videos, I can speed this up. So thank you for your patience, but if you do want to ask me any questions while I'm doing this, you're more than welcome. Help me pass the time. The joy of picture framing is an awful lot simple. It's a very simple technique, but just time consuming. If you are going to be doing this at home, I would recommend a much thicker thread. They do tend to be a bit more expensive, the thicker threads, so just be aware of that. And as you can see, you have to use rather a lot of them, so it's the other reason for using a thicker thread as well. So, joy of the lacing technique is we can come back to it over and over again. So, what time is it? So I've been going for about an hour and a half now, so I'm just going to quickly show you the the third technique I was going to talk about tonight, which is the canvas block. And we'll have to come back another time and finish off the lacing. The canvas block is an awful lot more simple. Just going to trim off a bit of excess. It's all going to be trimmed off in behind anyway. So what we're doing with this canvas basically is we're putting it on an internal stretcher bar, and we're going to take it all the way around the back and pin it nice and neatly with nice neat hospital corners, and then finish it off with a bit of tape and string. So these are specifically designed stretcher bars, so they're designed to slope away from the image. But they've also got this secondary groove on the inside here, so at a later stage you can put a wedge in there and push them apart. And as you can see, they're actually a two-way mechanism, so you could have them as a deep stretcher as well as a thin stretcher if you wanted, as we've used here. So I'm just lining up the base here initially. I'm going to have to do a couple of pins here and there just to tweak it and make sure it's all in the right place. And just with some canvas pliers here, I'm just going to stretch the back into the right place. So I might need to remove the pins and manoeuvre it a little bit, which is the reason why I only put one pin in initially. Seems to be in the right place, which is good. Now the acid test, which is the ends here. So it's a bit of a better angle. You get these 4 pins in, we'll check this on the square. Quite on the square. A little bit off. You never know with these things whether they're out of pins or whether it's just gravity messing with that. No, they're actually out of pins. Fortunately, I have a box of adjusting. It's almost as if I could pen. So again, with all of these things, there's a couple of different ways of doing them. If you want to do them ultra conservatively for masses of years to come with oil paintings and things like that, we would use galvanized pins. I don't have them immediately in hand, but they're just little tacks which won't rust over time, basically. So all I'm doing exactly as with the other one is just putting a little bit of tension on. And keep it fairly spaced out initially, so that I can come back and tweak it all and even it up a little bit later. It's already starting to get drum tight, which is good. Always try and do the opposites first. Depends obviously on what surface you're using, but try not rubbing the surface by manoeuvring it this way, lift and turn. Lifting and turning obviously stops the surface from rubbing against anything like a carpet like this. And all I'm doing is I'm just going around and judging the edge, making sure no white's visible around the outside of it. This is obviously one that we've printed off ourselves, so we know this is nice and square. The issue often comes with things which are made in non-first world countries, you know, your African bed linens and your car paints and things like that. So I've only got a few pins in there initially, so I'm just checking the sides. So I'll go back and I'll just go over it and essentially get as much tension in as I can. Important thing is not having any white visible. Always try and do the opposite sides as you go. Get a nice bit of tension on it. Just checking it's nice and drum tight as you go. Move the ears out of the way, make your life a bit easier. So obviously on this one we've got a nice chunky bit of canvas bleed area. And some of them you'll have a tiny amount, and that gets really quite fiddly. This is a lovely canvas print that we've done in-house for someone who's having a themed room, which is fantastic. It's a nice little project anyway. Yeah. Some amazing photos of their adventures. The edges you need to be a little bit more careful on, just because obviously you've got the pointy section of the corner. And that corner can crack through, especially on a weaker canvas or a bed sheet. I'm just checking it for that lovely drum noise as I go through, so make sure that nice tightness to it. That one is a little bit too long. Just work that one out. And the other nature of having a lot of canvas to play with. That's a little bit neater. So I think that's my camera giving up the ghost. So just switch back to that one and hide that. So. Just finishing off these sides here anyway, so we probably want to go for the long shot. So. Nice needles for corners, drum tight there. So one of the other things that you'll notice is that I'm pinning it in almost like in a windmill fashion, this way around. That's obviously a framing technique, to be honest, so that when we get in a frame later, one side is going to be packed out evenly rather than just being overpowered on one side. So that's a sort of future proofing it really, because the joy of a canvas block is that you can always change it later and add a frame to it. There you go. So nice neat canvas block. Nice neat on the edges. So all we're going to do on the back here is trim off this excess and then put some tapes across it and then put some string across it, all ready to go on the wall. Because we've printed it, we're going to spray a nice laminate over the top of it to protect it for years to come. So just taking off the excess, so it's a little bit easier to frame. The neatness of the actual cut at the back here doesn't matter that much because it's all going to be covered by tape. I'm not going to actually put the tape on it at the moment. As I mentioned, I've got to do all the lamination on it, so we're just going to tap in the pins, keep that tension in. So that's now ready to go back off downstairs for its lamination. So nice and drum tight all over. As I mentioned earlier, if you ever do need to, as all canvas will do, is it will sag over time. So you can put some wedges in there and push these apart, which will obviously re-stretch it in the frame. So tonight then we've done a little bit of lacing. I can finish off that technique another time, but it is very time consuming, probably a little bit boring to watch. You've seen 3 different cross stitches commercially stretched. Again, we still need to finish those off. We'll get the actual square of the mount with it, put the mount over the top, and then just tweak the cross stitches with a needle out of sight, so nothing will be visible, and it all gets it within that nice sort of line area. And it will be within 0.5 millimetre to 1/4 millimetre out, probably. We've obviously finished off a couple of medals and the dog, and we've showed you the canvas technique. So thank you very much for watching tonight. I'm off to go into my bed as it's getting a bit late. Yes, 10 o'clock. So thank you very much for watching tonight. If you have any other questions, then please do contact us through any of the social media things, or obviously on our website, framecraftonline.com, and you can also keep up to date with all our different projects on things like Instagram and stuff like that. So we recently finished off Gingy. We've got Gingy up there. The other cross stitch that we did in the past week or so, the Jacobean one, which wasn't stretched by us, but stretched by the customer themselves, but we've fully framed it. We'll be putting up on Instagram within the next few days, so keep an eye out for that. And we very much look forward to seeing you again. So thank you very much for watching.